The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Okay, so good morning, everyone. I think we're going to wait just another minute to allow people to log in. I think we have about 139 registered, and we're now at about 81, 82 now that have logged in. So just hold tight for about 30 seconds, and then we'll get started. Okay, so good morning, everyone. Thank you all for joining us today for this overview of the new statewide business retention and expansion program called Engage. I want to say welcome to everyone who's participating today. And just a little housekeeping before we get things started. We have muted everyone that is participating in today's webinar. And the plan is to provide some background about the Engage program, provide an overview of the recently published and distributed guidelines. And then at the end, we plan to answer any questions that you may have. As we are moving through the material, please feel free to post your questions through the questions section of the webinar, which you can see in the bottom right-hand corner of your screen. Additionally, if you have any questions or any issues, I should say, please feel free to send us a note through the chat function, which again is in the bottom right-hand corner of your screen. Before we get things underway too, I want to just say that we have several other folks here from DCED who may be chiming in throughout this presentation. We have Neil Fowler, Jennifer Lynch, Carol Kilko, Jennifer Leinbach, Gwen Ross, and we also have Ashley Parcells here assisting us with the tech for the webinar. So a little bit about myself. My name is Britt Earp. I'm the Deputy Director of the Center for Strategic Partnerships here at the Pennsylvania Department of Community and Economic Development, or DCED. I've been with DCED a little over 2 years, but have more than 15 years working in state government, both in the executive and legislative branches. For the past year or so, I've been working with a team here at DCED, most of whom are in this room with us now, to develop this program, Engage. I should also mention that we have had some input from representatives of our Partnerships for Regional Economic Performance, or PREP partners, to develop this program. Pennsylvania previously had a BRE program entitled BREP, which ended in 2010, and at one point was considered a national model. While this program is not BREP, there are some things that we learned from BREP that we want to see instituted in this program. So discussions about reinvigorating a business retention program came from a number of instances where the secretary or others reached out to our office to see what, if any, contact had been made with companies that had recently announced they were downsizing, moving, or closing altogether. All too often in those instances, we could not find any recent outreach to that company by either our office at DCED or our economic development partners. We wanted to increase outreach efforts and fully realized that this may require additional feet on the ground. As a BRE program, Engage is focused on outreach and follow-up care to businesses for the purposes of retaining them and their workforce, and ultimately seeing them grow within their existing communities. The economic backbone of our communities are businesses, robust and healthy businesses, small, medium, or large in size. It is our job as economic development or workforce development providers to be in contact with key businesses in communities on a regular basis and to do a health check. While a lot of news about economic development tends to focus on attracting new businesses, we also know that anywhere between 80 and 95% of economic growth in local communities is attributed to startups and existing businesses. It can also cost 6 to 7 times as much to attract a new business than to assist one already in the community. So we want to focus on and foster those businesses that are already within our communities. At DCED, we are very interested in finding out directly from businesses what they need and how we can help them. The Engage program is a statewide business retention and expansion program that is built around proactive outreach to businesses across the state with dedicated, experienced individuals meeting with company decision makers and then providing follow-up care based upon the company's identified needs. And again, this is all about listening to businesses first and then assisting them in addressing their needs. The reason for this program is because we want to assist individual companies, and we want to keep our finger on the pulse of the business community. We want to know their opportunities for growth, as well as the pain points that are holding them back. We don't want to wait until it's too late to help them. And unfortunately, sometimes that is when businesses will reach out for help, too late in the process for us to actually help. So this program is going to be a three-pronged approach that will be implemented and delivered by a robust network of state, regional, and local partners. And as you can see from the diagram, which is just so lovely, the governor will be conducting outreach to businesses in one-on-one situations. Additionally, DCED, LNI, and our other sister state agencies will be conducting outreach to businesses, including our governor's action team, who will be conducting follow-up with those individual companies that they've had deals with within the last 5 years. Also within DCED and LNI, that consists of our secretaries and deputy secretaries that are meeting one-on-one with business leaders. And all of that is then captured within a single repository of information, which we'll talk about in a little bit. But then the third prong is our local, regional, and local economic and workforce development organizations. So $2.5 million has been allocated to Engage in the fiscal year 17-18 budget. And again, this is an emphasis on experienced individuals that are conducting outreach to businesses. We want to make the point that this is a quality over quantity approach, that it is not a scattershot approach where we want to hit as many companies as possible. Instead, it should be targeted companies that we think deserve a, quote, deeper dive with those businesses. And finally, a key component of the Engage program is that we're using a single repository of information to capture, track, and share information amongst all of our partners. So proposals need to address business outreach and the aftercare portion. And those proposals should include the identification and targeting of companies, because again, this is a very targeted approach of who will be visited by the Engage team. Number two is the engagement of companies through various outreach methods. So while we do think that the backbone of this program is one-on-one interactions with company leaders, it could also be outreach methods such as social media, CEO forums, next generation sector partnership program. It could be anything else that I'm missing there. Number three, an assessment of the needs of those targeted companies. So it is not just going in and meeting with those companies one-on-one, but also developing an action plan for that company based on the meeting and the conversation that happens with that company. And finally, it's assisting those targeted companies through referrals and direct technical assistance.
Just to pause and address one question, and we will try and address questions either as we go along or at the end, but there's a question now about will partners be informed of visits conducted by the governor or other state agencies? Yes, and the primary means of doing that will be recording it in our CRM Executive Pulse. But I think, especially since we have partners involved in many of our GAT projects, that we will strongly encourage our GAT partners to reach out and make sure that our partners know and most likely be invited to participate in those visits. Good question.
The other state agencies now, we're working with LNI. They do a lot of visits with companies. I'm sure we'll be able to find out what companies are being visited there, but that's going to be a work in progress with other agencies because we don't have that kind of connection with all of them, but we'll do the best we can.
And as Carol just said, we are working on it. So as far as eligible applicants for the Engage program, we are accepting applications from nonprofits, local governments, municipal agencies, and industrial development agencies. For-profits are not eligible to apply. And this has been one of the biggest questions that we've received is whether this is intended just for prep partners to apply. We do feel as though the prep partners will apply for this, and they are definitely best suited for doing the outreach for this program, but this program currently is not constrained to prep partners only. I would add a caveat here, that is just on this slide, that prep partners should be included in proposals for the appropriate aftercare services. Because again, the Engage program is not just about that initial outreach to the companies, but it's also about the follow-up care that is provided to those companies afterwards. So the uses of funds, the guidelines lay out a number of instances where you can use the funds, but I'm just going to focus on the salary and personnel expenses, contracted professional services, as well as the research and preparation. Because for us, this program really is about ensuring that we have experienced and dedicated individuals who are conducting this outreach. So if it means hiring a new person for your current or existing staff, or contracting out through a 1099 function, then we see those as very eligible uses of funds. Anything to add, Neil?
Just about the research and preparation, as many of you might know, we have been able to pilot this program with some DoD funds that we have, and one particular organization or partner is doing a good bit of work in terms of doing research and prep work before they get in and visit a company, whether it's detailed information about the company or the industry that the company's involved with. And we really like that model, and it would encourage our other potential applicants here to make that a strong part of their application.
I would just add to that too, that that applicant under DoD funding, they were able to work with a local university to identify someone to assist them with that research. So, eligible applicants should consider that as a method. So funds may not be used for indirect costs, alcohol, and entertainment purposes. And all expenditures must be supported with documentation because the actual payments are based on reimbursement basis. So we must have receipts that would support anything that you are seeking funding for.
A couple quick questions here about legitimate expenses. Yes, personnel expenses can include reasonable administrative costs. Let me just comment on the question about metrics. We believe that the primary metrics are, in fact, visits, what many would call outputs. We believe the outcomes really are captured by the work that our prep partners already are doing. So we did not put great emphasis on going out and trying to measure the ultimate assistance that's providing by partners during the aftercare. We believe that's primarily going to be captured by our existing economic development network.
Anything else? So as far as the distribution of funds, we do not have a set funding formula for this program, and the coverage areas do not need to be based on the prep regions. Applicants may propose to cover all 67 counties or a statewide proposal, or they may cover a smaller subset. We have had a number of questions to date about whether or not an organization can be part of two separate proposals, and to that we absolutely say that they can. The only thing that we would say is that All proposals should have some sort of regional component to them as far as the coverage area. So we're not interested in a single county organization coming in, but if that county wants to partner up with one or two other counties, we would definitely consider that proposal.
A question has come in about any specific sectors that are favored. We are asking our partners to try and identify the priority types of companies that should be visited. We are not articulating what you should do, but we are asking you in the application process to tell us how you will prioritize it. Obviously, we're generally not looking for, pizza shops and barber shops and those types of businesses, but we're looking at a wide range of companies and business sectors. So we're really going to allow our partners to tell us what they believe is important. It's also why we are developing stronger relationships with our workforce partners so that they can also have a voice in the types of companies that perhaps should be visited. In terms of the number of callers in a regional application, no, we aren't dictating how many callers there should be, but we will continue to emphasize that we think the people that are out visiting callers, this should be a significant portion of their job. We would discourage having a large number of callers doing this 5 or 10% of their time. We think that these need to be experienced, trained individuals, and this is a significant part of their daily job. All costs are direct. This is similar to our PrEP guidelines, and so any questions about that, we can handle that offline. But generally, we want our costs to be direct, unless there's a cost allocation plan that some partners utilize for PrEP, and we will entertain that as well.
So as we've mentioned previously, applicants are encouraged to collaborate with existing economic development and workforce development partners. As you can see, there are a number that were mentioned in the guidelines that we've included here, including the Ben Franklin Technology Partners, labor and industry, the workforce development boards, next generation sector partnerships. We also hope that you'll include the PrEP network, as well as the IRCs and any of the Keystone Innovation Zones. So the proposals must cover a 12-month period, and we're asking that proposals use a start date of February 1st, 2018. Now we get into impact measures. So all the proposals should forecast, track, and report program metrics. And as we previously mentioned, metrics will be collected and reported through the Customer Relationship Management System, Executive Pulse. And Executive Pulse is a required component of this program. Program metrics that will be tracked are the number of companies contacted. And for this, we intend that it's a one-way interaction. So there's no actual response that's required from the company. This could be a blast email, although I'm not recommending that, but a blast email to 100 companies. Those 100 companies would be considered contacted under our metrics. Again, that's just an example. The number of companies engaged would be any instance where there is a two-way interaction. So there is a response required from the company. Whether the company agrees to meet or not, the company actually responds to your request. Then there's the number of engaged surveys that are completed. And the survey will be provided within Executive Pulse and then attached to companies within the Executive Pulse system. We will be sharing the engaged survey on this webinar, so if you can just hold on for a few minutes. So the number of referrals to our funded PrEP partners will need to be collected, as well as the number of referrals to our non-funded PrEP partners. Also, we're talking about the number of company visits with our partner organizations and the number of focus groups or business walks. We also want to capture the number of social media connections, that are done within those companies. And then very important is the number of proposed company action plans that have been developed, as well as the number of proposed company action plans that have been accepted for implementation by the company. And we will be providing an action plan template at a later date. And yes, applicants are required to use the Engage survey. That's not to say that applicants can't adjust what is part of the survey when they go in to meet with companies, but there is a minimum of information that we will require within the Executive Pulse system. So again, Executive Pulse must be used for recording and tracking interactions with companies. And this survey form will be provided within Executive Pulse. The survey is intended to be brief, and we're capturing mostly narrative information. So we're going to show you what it looks like. So it's about 4 pages in length, and we want to ensure that it is not a list of questions, so someone isn't going in and meeting with the business and rattling off a question saying yes or no. This is really a narrative capture of the conversation that happens with that business leader. Some of the feedback that we got from the BREP program is that the survey that was used for that program was entirely too long. It ended up being like 10 to 15 pages of questions. We don't want that to happen in this case, so we're limiting it. Bear with us while we... Okay.
You could read the survey. Distribute that.
Well, we will be distributing the survey to everyone that's participating today, and we'll also have a copy of it available on our web page. And yes, the PowerPoint will be emailed following the webinar, and similarly, we'll make it available on our web page. So as far as the application procedures themselves, this is a competitive process. And we have folks from DCED and L&I that will be conducting the review of the applications. We're asking that you submit one electronic version of the proposal by December 8th, 2017. Within the application, you should identify all individuals conducting the Engage visits and any other direct outreach to companies that you intend to do. You also should define the proposed geographical region that will be covered, explain the companies to be targeted for outreach and why. And as Neil addressed earlier, we're not looking for specific industries. That is up to the applicants to determine. We also want you to define the current business support services that are made available as part of the aftercare process. Outline your performance metrics and milestones. And also identify any partner organizations that will receive Engage funds as part of your overall proposal. Additionally, the budget should include breakdowns of costs associated with your Engage visits and the aftercare services. And Appendix I of the guidelines shows an example, which we've included here, of how the budget breakdown should be included within your proposal. So as far as evaluation criteria, these are the areas that our evaluation team, the DCED and L&I folks will be using to really grade those proposals that we receive. So all work plans will be evaluated on the strength of the proposal in the following categories. The description of the individuals performing outreach. And for those individuals, if you have a resume or a CV that you can include for the individuals that you've already identified, or if you are planning to hire someone, we would like to see a job description of the individual that you intend to hire for the position. 2, we would like to see the commitment to customer service, because to us, this is a customer service program. It's the dedicated individuals that are going out and meeting with these companies and, providing the service to them. Number 3, a process to engage, assess, and assist companies. Again, it is that, full process of going out and meeting with them, developing that action plan once the meeting has concluded, and then going back and assisting them with any identified needs. Number 4 is the process for the company action plans and the follow-up care. And then number 5 is the inclusion of regional efforts and partners. And then number 6 are the budget costs. Because again, we only have $2.5 million for this program. So we will be considering, an overall goal of keeping within that $2.5 million. So applications should be innovative and regional in their approaches. We do want to see some creative options that are proposed to us. And once again, the proposal should show those partnerships. Eligible applicants will be required to present their proposals to a review team before a selection is made. And we've discussed doing a Shark Tank sort of orientation, where we would bring individuals in, or organizations in, to do a presentation to us in person. However, due to the quick timeline that we may have in actually reviewing these and making a final decision, we may need to do some of those by phone. Finally, DCED does reserve the right to ask applicants to revise their applications. Because we could see 2 applications that come in to cover the same territory, and we may see some synergies between those applications and go back to the applicants and ask them to potentially apply together. So once the selections have been made, commitment letters will be issued to successful applicants, who will then submit an electronic online single application for assistance. And then, of course, funds will be dispersed on a reimbursement basis, and documentation supporting all costs must be maintained and submitted when requested to DCED. So as far as project closeout and reports, this was in the guidelines. DCED will provide a standardized template for that, and the reports will be submitted via email on a quarterly basis to us here at DCED. So as far as the miscellaneous program requirements, again, these are within the guidelines themselves. There is the non-discrimination clause, and that will be required to be part of any grant that we any contract that we have with organizations. We want to ensure that there's no conflict of interest for the applicants. And as far as project records, again, you must keep documentation in case we have any sort of needs for accessing that information. Finally, the deadline for submissions is December 8th, 2017 at 5 p.m. Again, you should submit via email to me at brearp@pa.gov. We're requesting that you submit 1 electronic copy that is no longer than 20 pages in length, not including the appendices, but yes. And now, if we have any additional questions, we'll open it up for that.
So let's since we have some time, let's try and go through some of the questions that we didn't answer or address, and see if we can clarify some of them. So let's start from the bottom, Ashley. Can we just scroll up? I think that might be the easiest.
Yeah, at the bottom. Bear with us while we handle this.
Is it DCED's preference to have only one organization win the award and manage all 67 counties? No, while we are allowing for statewide applicants, we don't have a preference either way. We expect that we will see a large number of regional applications, but there is the potential for some statewide applications. We will see what they all look like. And again, as Britt said earlier, we may ask some of our partners to revise their applications, consider some partnership opportunities. Is there a limit on the amount of funds an organization could apply for a statewide program? I guess technically a statewide program could request the entire $2.5 million. We want to certainly allocate all of the funds, and we certainly want to make sure that all 67 counties are covered one way or another. Aftercare services will be difficult to project. How do you want applicants to define? Eric, I think a good question. I think we talked about this a little bit. Right now, we're making the assumption that most of the aftercare will be performed by our existing prep partners. Thus, we are suggesting that most, if not all, of the aftercare resources should be allocated to our prep partners. We've also said that we think that the callers themselves can provide some level of aftercare, and that's why the emphasis is on experienced individuals. And so, we're not looking for a real shotgun approach, and let's try and get as many companies as possible. We believe that caller may need to come back to the office, determine whether they should make some referrals to existing prep partners or others, and then perhaps they do some additional research and provide some assistance themselves. Earlier it was mentioned this should be a full-time or near full-time position that's only funded for a year, and it also just said in the last slide to show all people who will do interviews. You want to address that, Britt? Do you just want full-time rep people on all the proposal, or all people in counties that do this as part of their job? We're asking you to tell us who is going to be making the calls, whether it's a single full-time person or you might have 2 or 3 people. Sort of our comments earlier were that we don't think this should be something that's done by a person 10% of their time. It needs to be someone who is really this is a significant portion of their day-to-day job, and thus we're looking for probably fewer individuals doing it, but it's a more dedicated activity.
There was a question as to whether the proposal needs to be submitted through the single application format. No, it should not be submitted through that.
Is DC or L&I available to review draft proposals? We certainly are available to answer questions, but since it is a competitive program, we will not be receiving draft proposals and commenting on it. Yes, anyone who is going to be doing formal engaged outreach will be expected to put their data in Executive Pulse, whether it's a state agency or a partner.
As far as whether the governor's office and state agencies will be using Executive Pulse to input their discussions, we are doing that. We're starting to do that now. So yes, that information should be available within Executive Pulse.
Question again about aftercare and permitting, which is typically handled by an EDC. Again, I think that goes back to our earlier comments that primarily the aftercare is expected to be performed by our prep partners. And since EDCs are primarily our prep partners, we would expect them to be available to do some of that aftercare. In terms of aftercare, this might be a good time to indicate that what we want to learn through this is what type of assistance is needed by our companies. And so as this program goes on, I think we may learn whether there needs to be other resources added to our toolbox of services. So since it is a new program and we have a lot to learn in terms of what companies are going to tell us, we're just making the assumption that that most of the aftercare can be provided by existing partners. We may find out differently as we continue to speak with companies. Perhaps it means all of our partners have to adjust the services that they provide, and I think that's a good thing, so that as we go along, we are reacting to the needs of our businesses. That's really the principle behind NextGen, which most of you have been part of now or exposed to. And so, especially during this first year, we want to get a feel for what are the types of concerns, issues, challenges that our businesses are facing, and then make sure that the proper aftercare is tweaked to make sure we can deliver those services. Yes, if a regional or statewide organization is granted the contract to conduct the interviews, they develop an action plan that's provided to the local county prep partners with or without local prep partner input. No, I think it would be smart that if a statewide entity plans to submit, that they make sure that they speak with the local and regional prep partners, letting them know that they would like them to be part of their statewide application, and talk about the resources that those partners would need to deliver aftercare services.
We had a question about the contract period ending date. We were asking that you start it on February 1st and end it January 31st of 2019. So it should be the 12-month program that crosses the fiscal years.
No match is required. And yes, DCED is dedicating people to this program, and so we will certainly help to resolve any issues during the aftercare or any part of the contract administration process.
Any additional questions?
If you asked a question and we didn't get to it, feel free to enter it again. We may have missed some. We do intend to try and put together an FAQ page to try and make sure that we address all the questions that are posed either here or subsequently.
So yes, the cost of aftercare should be included within the budget of the program. So any submission should include those costs involved for aftercare services.
I don't think a decision has been made. There's a question about date for budget adjustments. Again, since this is a new program, we will monitor that. We certainly, whether it's PrEP or any of our other programs, we are hopeful that there's a limit to the number of budget requests that are made. But I think that in the first year of the program, we will be flexible. And if the need is there and there is adequate justification, we've always been happy to entertain budget amendments to make sure that resources are directed where they need to be.
Oh yeah, we should mention that executive pulse training will be provided for anyone that would like it. And yes, at least at this point, it would be rebid every year.
That's the intent now. You may remember that the first year of PrEP, we actually amended it and added a second year. So again, I think a lot of it depends on how things go in the first year. But our intent is to make sure that, as Britt said earlier, we want to use this, and that's why we're looking at innovative models. We're not trying to be very prescriptive. We think that there's probably some lessons to be learned. So if there's an application in one part of the state that's different from another corner of the state, that's a good thing, and we can learn what works and share that information, and hopefully then land on the right process here. But we want to allow for flexibility and creativity.
Erica Mulberger, she's right in the middle. See the question? We aren't the right group for that. Erica, this is Carol Kilco. I'm reading your question about the market penetration to the companies that are visited by economic development partners. I mean, we obviously, we can't answer that question as to whether or not the workforce partners would get credit for that, but I can tell you this, that if there's a partnership between the two, I would think that L&I would look favorably at that, and there might be some opportunity there. We have talked with L&I about this a lot.
The question has been posed about other state agencies being brought into the aftercare process. We certainly would expect all of our state agencies to be available to help if there's aftercare that's needed. Obviously, we're not paying them to do it, but we will be glad to make any introductions, run interference. I think most of you have appreciated that, especially over the past couple years, we have made great strides in developing closer relationships with our partners in the workforce world. We are continuing to work on a process to be able to share information with them and they with us in order to help better target our company, better serve our company. So we certainly have every expectation that whether it's L&I or any other state agency that might need to be involved in any aftercare, that we will certainly do all we can to run that interference and make sure that they are available to help as needed. The question about what value do we place on small businesses and startups? We place a high level of importance on small and medium-sized businesses. So we would certainly encourage any business targeting to strongly include our small and medium-sized businesses. Again, we want to be flexible. We want our regions to tell us what are the priorities in terms of the business sectors. I think the types of businesses, the sectors are probably a little bit more important than the size. But we want to be impactful here, and we also want to make sure that we're meeting the needs both of companies that are showing signs of contracting, experiencing difficulties. On the other hand, we also are looking for companies that are poised for growth, those who, with a little nudge, maybe some additional financial assistance, technical assistance, can grow even faster. So it is somewhat of a balance, and it's meant to be that way. So as you're working through the types of companies to visit, be on the lookout for those that need to be triaged, as well as those who are poised for growth and can immediately or with a little bit of help, create additional jobs.
All right, so it sounds like I think that we've exhausted most of the questions that have been submitted to us. But if you have additional questions, you can contact me anytime. My contact information is here. You can contact me by phone, 717-720-7329, or via email at brearp@pa.gov. We will be posting a list of the questions that we received as well as our responses on the website. We'll also be posting a copy of this PowerPoint presentation as well as a copy of the Engage survey. We'll be sure to email out a copy of this PowerPoint presentation and the survey as well. So again, if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me or even Neil.